We are at EarthX, and we are ready for our next guest here at the podium, talking to Abraham Tueme, who is the Director of Sustainability of Coca-Cola Southwest Beverages, one of the larger bottling companies supplying Coca-Cola throughout the United States. So, Abraham, that is an interesting challenge, to run sustainability for something that lots of people associate with problems and sustainability. So tell me how successful you can be.
Absolutely, thank you. Yes, I believe it is a challenge at times. At the same time, the value or what I see as this massive opportunity for us to lead the way in that transition, lead the way in kind of what a sustainable beverage company should look like. I think a lot of eyes are set on us, and that provides that opportunity to really influence the industry as a whole in our decisions, in our campaigns, and also just in the way that we address sustainability to begin with.
So maybe we can talk about the specific policies you're trying to implement, but first let me ask you this. I mean, so many of these things have to do with value. As you know, there are countries where, just a can of Coca-Cola is immensely valuable. Mm-hmm. So people will always collect it. So it will never end up in the waste stream because it can be sold. Yeah. Right? Isn't that the ultimate solution, that there is value in the waste in such a way that, it doesn't end up in places where we don't want it to be?
Yes, that is for us a great reason of why recycling was kind of the big bet that we did for circular economy. We saw the potential of our products to be recycled multiple times and not become another waste item. But in order for that to happen, we needed to be very concise and very committed to using that recycled material. So it's something that we as a bottler operating in Texas and parts of the surrounding states that we strived on, and we definitely are pushing to ensure that it's a solution across our packaging portfolio, and particularly for PET bottles. That is something that a lot of people kind of consider a key element of the waste pollution issue. That's where we went all in, and we started investing heavily to bring back those bottles into our supply chain, recycle them, and create new bottles that are made out of recycled material. We actually introduced bottles made with 100% recycled plastic to the market a couple of years ago, and we are averaging across our plastic consumption, particularly the consumption of PET bottles, we're averaging over 50% of that coming from recycled sources.
But how do you do that? How do you get that bottle back?
So we've done investments in communities to kind of create additional recycling access. The reality is that recycling is something that is already heavily distributed in all your major metro areas, but Texas, that has this big kind of distinction between the large urban areas that host multiple millions of residents and the smaller communities that may have tens or 20,000s of residents. We're not necessarily getting all the attention on, creating recycling programs and achieving an end-to-end consolidation of the materials. So when we came in, what we did was we started investing in those communities. A lot of them had something to begin with. Recycling, since it has that intrinsic value of the materials being recovered, and a lot of times recovered at a profit, because nobody necessarily charges you for disposing of an item in a recycling bin. They typically just go ahead and do it. So they kind of, at that point, they transfer the ownership to the recycler, the recycling facility, and in those processes, we help them connect the dots and make sure that material actually made its way into the market. And by doing that, we increase the collection capacity of our operations, and with that, enable the closed loop of our materials. So what we really saw was there's this opportunity to target this source of material that is going to create jobs in the process, because people are going to need to get to one way or the other, get the bottles back. A lot of times it's through materials recovery facilities, but also smaller communities might have a single drop-off place where they're coming in and recyclables are they're collected. And then at that point, they need to find their way to the end users for processing. So all the different solutions were kind of very localized, were very based on what that particular community needed.
But you go to a small community, and you need to encourage the consumer to bring that bottle back.
Yes.
So do you pay the consumer?
No, a lot of times what we do is we create the awareness of what their decision can make. Their decision can create a longer term issue with, let's say we have a consumer that is not necessarily littering, but that will have the opportunity of choosing between disposing of a container in a recycling bin or doing so in a regular trash bin. We create that awareness through education campaigns that there is a choice to be made and that they can be a part of the solution in that individual decision.
So now I'm taking you to, you must have been at some kind of diner and you have that plate and all that, and you're standing in front of these bins. Now, and I'm sure you had a good education, and you're standing there. Do you know what you need to do? I mean, how many people in the world do know what they need to do then?
It is a challenge. It is a challenge that that in itself is why the solution needs to be localized. Because a lot of time the confusion doesn't stem because the person doesn't directly follow an instruction or doesn't directly know what they should do, but because they're hearing mixed messages. They're hearing you should do this here, you should do this other thing over here. And that usually happens because of the recycling infrastructure that's set up in that community. So what we do is we go to all of our partners and we say, there's no singular message, and in fact, as a company, we refuse to create a marketing material that would be one size fits all, because we know that that's not the reality that is going to be out there. We instead create those localized campaigns. So if someone living, for example, in Frisco, Texas, where I live, is receiving information on what to recycle and how to recycle, that is localized to that particular community, and that is what their curbside program should do. Does it create the challenge on travelers, for example? It does, and that's why some of our investments have also been done on educating consumers through technology. So, for example, DFW Airport, we're running a pilot right now with them where we put in recycling bins. They're actually here at EarthX as well. SmartSword is the vendor, and that recycling bin provides direct feedback. This is recyclable, this is compostable, or this needs to be landfilled.
Oh,
so it's something
it tells me. I show it.
As you're approaching it, it detects the object and tells you this is what it is. So it allows for that flexibility of us saying, you know what, we may have one program that runs in one particular way at DFW Airport, and we have a different program that runs in a different way at American Airlines, for example, where we also have this. So it creates that ability to solve the challenge at a venue level. We still have, I would say, as a society, an opportunity on the direct curbside level, but that is something that all the education campaigns with our partners, which a lot of times are municipalities, that's how we target those.
You phrased that well. We have an opportunity, and I'm sure that's true. So how did you become a director of sustainability?
So I'm originally from Mexico. I started working in Mexico 8 years ago within the Coca-Cola system in Arca Continental, which is the third or fourth, depending on their results each year, largest bottler in the world. And they have...
and you went to work there because you were interested in recycling?
Yes. So I started working, I actually did an internship 9 years ago. That was the very first start for me there. I did an internship on their environmental team. And what their environmental team was focused on was on making sure our facilities ran very efficiently on a water and energy basis, and create recycling programs for in-house material consumption.
Yeah.
What was missing there was the external facing element. So that actually then evolved when the Coca-Cola company launched a World Without Waste initiative in 2018. And that allowed us to look at what is happening to our materials and to our products after they've left our facility. And it led to us, reinforcing a lot of the projects that we did. But in Mexico, that was something that funnily enough, they did even 15 years before that initiative was launched with the creation of PetStar, a recycling facility in Toluca, very close to Mexico City, that is the largest PET recycler in the world, and that uses those plastic bottles that are sold across the market to then provide recycled resin to Arca and the other Coca-Cola bottlers, because everybody was an investor in this facility, to launch bottles made with recycled content. As Arca purchased us in the United States, we became the first bottler in all of the United States to achieve that 50% recycled content, because we very quickly brought in all the learnings from PetStar.
I see. Now take me a little further back. So you went to school, and did you focus there already on environmental issues? Is that your background?
A little bit. It's kind of something that as I was going through my career, it shifted. I'm a chemical engineer, and during the first 2 years of my career, I was so sure that I was going to work for the petrochemical industry, because all the processes that they do, I still to this day find them absolutely interesting from an engineering standpoint. They're so precise, and they're so kind of they require so much thinking and analysis and all that stuff that to me it was just incredible. As I started familiarizing myself with that a little bit more, plastics became the kind of like the focal point. And then plastics became something that I found even more interesting, and where I wanted to get even deeper. And at one point I realized, yes, all the science around polymers and plastics and new plastic technology is great, but we're not actually doing anything on the back end. We're not necessarily, it's not like gasoline that once it's consumed, it's gone. This was something that as it was consumed, it left a trace. And I started realizing, like, well, there's a lot of opportunity on that trace side. There's a lot of opportunity on
it's more that your focus is the waste, rather than, say, make the plant-based bottle, which is another attempt that at least Coca-Cola was involved with. But rather than doing that, that's the starting point, you say, rather than look at the production process, it's more important to bring it back.
Correct. Yeah. Yes. So the plant bottle was, I think, a great example of how we learned from what we were doing, because we launched something that it reduced maybe its dependence on fossil fuels, and with that, there was an argument to be made that it was a better plastic bottle than fossil fuel virgin-based plastic bottle. It still lacked the element of what's going to happen with it afterwards. And when we looked at kind of both of our potential strategies, integrating recycled content created demand for the recycled materials to be sorted and processed, something that the recycling industry as a whole has been calling for years. They've been saying, well, in order for us to invest in the sorting technology and in the ability to really get all of these materials back, there needs to be a buyer. So by us shifting that strategy and focusing on being the buyer for that material, we first unlocked a little bit of that supply. But then what we realized was, well, yes, but we're a big buyer. So we cannot only rely on somebody else making the investments and eventually that material will come back to us. We need to go out and face that head on.
Help ourselves. So what, in this process of making sure you get the product back, you think about this. And so let's dream a little bit. What is the thing that would really help you to get a lot more back? Is there some kind of law or some rule that we can put into place? Well, that would now help.
I think I know where you're going with this, and in many places in the world, it makes a ton of sense. Texas has the challenge of that. When you look at deposit process or bottle deposits keep, those are really great in high density communities, because you're able to collect the material back and create a quick kind of process to get the feedback of the material, and then it's kind of concise and compressed enough that the economics of picking up material from multiple sites where the pickup is smaller is doable. If you try to do that in a state like Texas, that element alone makes it that it's significantly more expensive than the virgin alternative. And
But
the challenge becomes,
is that the only thing we can do, the deposit?
No, absolutely not. No. So what we have done in the territory, how we have kind of unlocked recycling for our supply chain, we invested in communities that had some sort of program in place, and we just helped them expand that. Yeah, okay. And the best example that I can think of, because it's a partner that we've had since 2020, is the McAllen Recycling Center, very close to the border between the United States and Mexico. There's a community in McAllen, Texas, that is part of the Rio Grande Valley region. That community had a recycling center, and after the China sword ban, they could no longer find the market for their plastics. The challenge with their plastics was they have their single stream recycling community, so all of their materials got in, combined, then they get sorted out. They have really robust and strong sorting processes, but the material was still dirty to the naked eye because it's coming from the mix of all the other things. So they couldn't find a buyer that would consistently purchase the material. They could kind of offload every now and then, but it wasn't something that they had the certainty. So they were looking to continue expanding and continue building their operations, and they were facing the decision like, maybe we need to phase plastic out altogether from our streams in order for us to continue servicing our community on the recycling side. We came in, we provided that certainty through PetStar, through our recycler, of saying, every bottle that you collect in this facility will be purchased by us. We'll bring it back. We'll introduce that back into our supply chain. So with that certainty, they were able to go out to their community and say, we are taking plastic. There was a couple months gap, and then they came back and said, we're ready to take plastic again. But not only that, we invested in that community. We did a few grants over the years, and those grants have covered from a baler to a new truck for them to service the community, to roll-off trucks, because all of those communities now needed a place to hold their recyclables. And in a span of 3.5 years, almost 4 years, we were able to go from about 20,000 pounds of material that were processed in 2020 to 900,000 pounds of material that were sent to PetStar in 2024. So the jump there is only on PET bottles. What that means is that their recycling access actually expanded significantly, not only on plastic, on every other commodity that they take. Because in order for them to go from 20 to 900, they definitely had to grow significantly as a facility. And they actually received a grant earlier this year and are going to be expanding even more. They're putting in almost, I think it's around $10 million back into that facility. So they're going to expand even more their access. And with that, we've essentially created a hub for recycling in the border of the US and Mexico that is servicing the whole of the south of the state. So it's something massive that we've been able to kind of work alongside them and help them during different periods to continue expanding their ability to service more communities. And with that, it becomes something where if you find the right partners and if you replicate that same approach, you create those regional solutions that are in reality reflective of the kind of like the community itself and what that community is able to do. McAllen is one of the larger cities in that southern border. It would make sense for them to host that recycling facility, but then all of those other smaller communities, a lot of them work in McAllen. So it also was that necessary next step of saying, well, we'll open our doors to you because you're part of this community too. You get to bear the fruits of these recycling investments.
So this is, you talk about this with great passion, which is only to be commended. But so what do you hope to achieve, and what is your dream, if I may ask, for the future of that challenging business? And you have the final 30 seconds of our being together, so you have to be brief.
Yeah, my dream is that sustainability gains the relevance in decision making and purchasing power for everybody, so that when you see a bottle, for example, made out of 100% recycled plastic, that significantly outperforms every other bottle out there. Because when you do that, companies will listen, companies will follow along, and companies will do that same thing, that same innovation, and that same sustainable decision over and over, because they know they're going to get that return.
You want to lead.
Thanks so
you.
much. Thank you.